The machine said she had minutes left. Her heart had stopped 4 times that week. Her organs were shutting down one by one. The best doctors in 2 continents stood around her bed with empty hands and no answers. Then a fired cleaner walked into the room carrying a plant nobody believed in. What happened next made every doctor in that hospital question everything they were taught. Because Sofia Rodriguez, the billionaire's daughter who was supposed to die that night, opened her eyes. Not from surgery. Not from expensive medicine. Not from treatments that cost thousands of dollars. From a green herb that grew wild in forgotten places. From knowledge that hospitals called worthless. From a grandmother's wisdom that the world tried to bury. The girl everyone mocked had just saved a life nobody else could save. And the people who laughed at her were about to learn a lesson they'd never forget. The heart monitor beeped. Then beeped again. Then stopped. For 3 seconds, the intensive care unit went silent like the world had forgotten how to breathe. Then the alarm screamed. Doctors ran. Nurses shouted orders. Machines rolled across the floor with wheels that sounded like thunder in a small room. Sofia Rodriguez was 12 years old, and she was dying. Again. This was the 4th time this week her heart had tried to quit. The 4th time the medical team had to pull her back from wherever people go when their bodies give up. The 4th time her father watched through a glass wall, unable to do anything except stand there like a statue made of fear. Victor Rodriguez pressed his hand flat against the glass. His palm left a mark, sweat and desperation trapped between him and his daughter. He wore a suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. His watch could buy a house. His name opened doors in New York, London, Tokyo. None of it mattered here. The doctors worked for 7 minutes. 7 minutes that felt like 7 years. They pressed on her chest. They injected medications with names Victor couldn't pronounce. They shocked her heart twice. Finally, the monitor beeped again. Steady. Weak. But steady. The lead doctor, a tired woman named Dr. Chen, stepped out of the room. She pulled off her gloves slowly, like she was buying time before having to speak. Victor didn't wait. How much longer does she have? Dr. Chen looked at the floor. Mr. Rodriguez, answer me. She met his eyes then. Hers were red. Not from tears. From exhaustion. From watching children die despite doing everything right. 48 hours, she said quietly. Maybe less. Victor's knees almost gave out. Almost. He locked them. Forced himself to stay upright. Billionaires don't collapse in hospital hallways. They don't cry in front of people. They don't show weakness. But his daughter was dying, and he had run out of money's magic. 3 weeks ago, Sofia had been healthy. Laughing. Excited about visiting Lagos, the city where her mother was born before she passed away years ago. Victor had brought her here to reconnect with family roots, to show her the place her mother loved. They never made it to the family compound. Sofia got sick on day 2. A fever. Nothing serious at first. Then seizures. Then her organs started shutting down one by one, like lights going out in a house no one could save. The best doctors in Lagos examined her. Specialists flew in from South Africa, from London, from Boston. They ran tests that cost thousands of dollars. They used machines that looked like they belonged in space. Every test came back the same, negative. No infection. No virus. No bacteria. No toxin they could name. Her body was just stopping. We've tried everything, Dr. Chen said, and her voice cracked on the last word. Every protocol. Every experimental treatment we're allowed to use. I'm sorry. Victor stared through the glass at his daughter. Sofia's chest rose and fell, but only because a machine was breathing for her. Her skin looked gray. Her small hands lay still on white sheets. He had built an empire. Created wealth from nothing. Solved problems people said were impossible. But he couldn't save his own child. Behind him, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Night shift nurses arriving. Cleaning staff pushing carts. Life continued around him like he wasn't standing there breaking into pieces. One of those footsteps belonged to a girl nobody noticed. A girl who worked in the shadows of this hospital. A girl who carried something in her bag that doctors would call nonsense. Something that would change everything. But Victor didn't know that yet. Right now, all he knew was that his daughter had 2 days left. And the machines kept counting down. Alice Smith finished mopping the 3rd-floor corridor at 11:30 p.m. Her back hurt. Her hands were raw. Her uniform was soaked with sweat and smelled like disinfectant. She had been working for 14 hours straight because another cleaner called in sick and nobody else would cover the shift. Nobody wanted to work the night shift. It paid less. It was lonelier. And people treated you like furniture, something useful but not worth noticing. Alice was used to being invisible. She pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway, wheels squeaking against tile that never stayed clean for long. The hospital at night felt different, quieter, like all the sickness and death settled into the walls after visiting hours ended. She passed the ICU, saw the lights still on in one room, saw a man standing at the glass, shoulders bent like he was carrying stones. She looked away quickly. Rich people's problems weren't her business. Alice's problems were simpler: eat, sleep, send money home, survive. She was 23 years old and lived in a room with 5 other women, cleaners, cooks, shop assistants, all crammed into a space meant for 2 people. They shared one bathroom, one hot plate for cooking. They took turns sleeping because there weren't enough mattresses. Alice sent half her salary to her younger sister in the village. The girl was smart, smarter than Alice ever was. She deserved school fees. She deserved a chance. So Alice cleaned floors and stayed quiet and made herself small. But tonight, something felt wrong. She stopped her cat near a storage closet and pulled out her bag, an old cloth sack her grandmother had sewn years ago before she died. Inside, wrapped carefully in fabric, was the herb. It didn't look like much. Dried green leaves, thin stems, the kind of plant people walked past every day without seeing. But Alice's grandmother had used it to save lives. Memarabini had been a healer in their village. Not a doctor, not a nurse, just an old woman who knew plants the way other people knew books. She learned from her mother, who learned from her mother, going back so many generations nobody could count them all. People came to Memarabini when hospitals turned them away, when medicine stopped working, when doctors said there was nothing left to try. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes Memarabini brought them back. Alice remembered a boy, maybe 9 years old, who arrived at her grandmother's compound carried by his father. The boy was seizing, eyes rolled back, body shaking like something inside him was trying to break free. The hospital had sent him home. Said it was epilepsy they couldn't control. Said to make him comfortable. Memarabini crushed this plant, mixed it with water, made the boy drink it. 3 days later, he walked out of the compound. Weak, but walking. Alive. The doctors never asked how. Alice held the herb now, in a hospital storage closet, and whispered words her grandmother used to say. Not a prayer exactly. More like a promise. A reminder to herself that some knowledge survived even when people tried to bury it. Grandmother, if you were here, what would you do? She didn't expect an answer. But footsteps echoed nearby. Heavy. Slow. The kind of walk that belonged to someone who had nowhere to go but couldn't stop moving. Alice froze. The footsteps stopped outside the closet door. She held her breath. If someone caught her with the herbs, she'd be fired. Worse, they'd call her crazy. Call her dangerous. A shadow appeared in the gap under the door. Then a voice. Broken. Desperate. What is that plant? Alice's heart slammed against her ribs. She turned and saw the man from the ICU standing there, staring at the herb in her hands like it was the last thing on earth that mattered. Alice tried to hide the herb behind her back. Too late. Victor Rodriguez had already seen it. His eyes locked onto the dried green leaves like a drowning man spotting a rope. I asked you a question. His voice came out rough. Tired. Not angry, just empty of everything except need. What is that plant? Alice's throat went dry. Her hands shook. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. This was it. The moment she'd been avoiding since she started working here. The moment someone noticed. Sir, her voice cracked. It's nothing. I'm sorry. I'll leave. She tried to step past him. He didn't grab her. Didn't block her path. Just spoke again, quieter this time. My daughter is dying. Alice stopped. The doctors have tried everything, he continued. Every test. Every treatment. Every drug they could legally use. And she's still dying. He paused. Looked at the herb in her hands. You're holding something like it matters. Like it means something. Tell me why. Alice's grandmother used to say, truth has weight. You can feel it in a room. You can hear it in someone's voice. She heard it now. This man wasn't threatening her. He was begging. She turned slowly, met his eyes. They were red, exhausted. The kind of tired that came from watching someone you love slip away piece by piece. "Sir," she said carefully, "I'm just a cleaner. I don't want trouble." "I don't want pity," he shot back. "I want truth. What do you know?" Alice looked down at the herb, felt her grandmother's hands teaching her how to prepare it, heard her grandmother's voice. "This one stops the shaking sickness. But only if you catch it early. Only if you're brave enough to use it when everyone else tells you you're wrong." "The symptoms they are talking about upstairs," Alice began slowly. "The seizures, the organ failure, the way normal medicine doesn't work." She swallowed hard. "My grandmother treated this. In the village. People survived." Victor stared at her like she'd just spoken in another language. "People in a village." His tone shifted, not mocking, but confused. "Desperate. My daughter has access to the best doctors in 2 continents. Specialists who trained at Harvard, at Oxford. And you're telling me someone in a village knows better?" Alice wanted to explain about Memarabini, about the 12 people who came to her compound with bodies that medicine couldn't fix, about the 11 who walked out alive. But before she could speak, Victor continued. "She has 48 hours left." His voice broke on the number. "Maybe less. The doctors just told me. 48 hours, and then..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Alice felt something crack open in her chest. She knew that pain. She'd watched her grandmother die 2 years ago. Watched cancer eat through her slowly while doctors shook their heads and said there was nothing to be done. But this was different. This sickness, Alice knew its shape, knew its rhythm. "Sir," she spoke before fear could stop her. "If I told you this plant could help, would you believe me?" Victor looked at her for a long moment. Really looked. Not at her uniform. Not at her cheap shoes or her rough hands. At her. "No," he said honestly. "I wouldn't." The words hit like a punch. "But," he added, and his voice turned into something raw and broken, "I'm out of options. I'm out of science. I'm out of everything except 2 days and a prayer I don't know how to say anymore." He stepped closer. Not threatening. Just close enough that she could see the tears he was fighting to hold back. "So tell me, please, what do you know that they don't?" Alice took a breath and began to explain what her grandmother taught her about the plant that doctors threw away. The plant that grew in places nobody looked. The plant that saved people nobody believed in. Morning came too fast. Alice hadn't slept. After talking to Victor in that storage closet, after explaining everything she knew about the herb, after watching him walk away without saying whether he believed her or not, she'd spent the rest of her shift cleaning in a fog of worry. What if he reported her? What if he told the hospital administration that a cleaner was giving medical advice? What if she lost her job? She needed this job. Her sister needed school fees. Her roommates needed their share of rent. But at 7 a.m., when Alice pushed her cart past the ICU nurse's station, she heard something that made her stop. Voices. Loud. Urgent. The doctors were gathered around a computer screen, talking fast. "It's like nothing I've seen before," Dr. Chen was saying. "An inflammatory response we can't identify. Traditional autoimmune treatments aren't touching it." Another doctor leaned closer to the screen. Could it be environmental? Something she was exposed to here in Lagos. "We've tested for everything," Dr. Chen replied, frustration bleeding through her professional tone. "Every toxin. Every pathogen. Nothing fits." Alice's hands tightened on the cart handle. Those words. That exact description. It was the same thing her grandmother treated. The same pattern. The same way the sickness moved through the body like fire nobody could put out. Before she could think about whether it was smart, before fear could stop her, Alice stepped closer to the nurse's station. "Excuse me." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Nobody heard her. She tried again, louder. "Excuse me, please." One of the nurses, a woman named Funmi who had always been kind, turned around. "Yes, Alice. The sickness you're describing." Alice's heart beat so hard she thought everyone could hear it. "There's a plant. It slows down that kind of inflammation. My grandmother used it." The room went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet. The dangerous kind. Dr. Chen turned slowly. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" "There's a plant," Alice started again. A plant. The voice came from behind her. Cold. Sharp as broken glass. Alice turned. Cynthia Blake stood there. The hospital administrator. 40-something. Always dressed like she was about to attend a meeting with someone important. Always looking at cleaning staff like they were dirt she had to tolerate. You think you know more than our doctors. Cynthia walked closer, heels clicking against tile like a countdown. You, who clean toilets for a living. I didn't mean, Alice tried to explain. Security. Cynthia's voice cut through the hallway like a knife. 2 guards appeared within seconds. Check her bag, Cynthia ordered. She's been bringing unauthorized materials into a medical facility. Alice's stomach dropped. The guards took her bag, opened it, and there, wrapped in cloth, was the herb. Cynthia held it up like evidence of a crime. Shrine materials. In a hospital. Do you understand how dangerous this is? A crowd was forming. Nurses, doctors, patients' families. Everyone stopped to watch. My grandmother was a healer. Alice tried one more time. Your grandmother was a scammer. Cynthia's voice rose. And so are you. This is what happens when we hire people without proper background checks. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not everyone, but enough. Alice stood there, silent tears running down her face, and felt herself shrinking. Becoming invisible again. Becoming nothing. Security, escort her out, Cynthia announced. She's terminated. Effective immediately. The guards took her arms. Not rough, but firm. As they led her toward the elevator, Alice looked back one last time. Victor Rodriguez stood at the edge of the crowd. He'd seen everything. Their eyes met. And then, Sophia's room alarm went off. Loud. Screaming. Doctors ran. Nurses dropped what they were holding. Code blue. Code blue. Victor's face went white. Alice stopped walking. The guards pulled her forward. But as the elevator doors started to close, she whispered words nobody heard except herself. She's running out of time. The doors shut, and Alice disappeared into the hospital's basement, dragged away from the only person she might have saved. Sophia survived. Barely. The doctors brought her back after 11 minutes of chaos. 11 minutes of chest compressions and emergency drugs and machines working overtime to convince her heart to keep trying. When it was over, Dr. Chen stepped into the hallway where Victor waited. Her scrubs were wrinkled. Her face looked 10 years older than it had that morning. We bought some time, she said. Maybe 48 hours. Maybe less. Victor didn't respond. Couldn't. The words sat in his throat like stones. Dr. Chen touched his shoulder briefly, the kind of touch doctors give when they've run out of medical answers and all that's left is human sympathy. Then she walked away, leaving him alone in a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and dying hope. Victor stood there for 20 minutes. Maybe longer. Time felt broken. Finally, he moved. Not toward his daughter's room. Toward the exit. He needed air. Needed to think. Needed to figure out what came after everything you tried didn't work. The sun was setting when he reached the parking lot. Lagos traffic roared in the distance. Car horns, generator engines, street vendors shouting about phone credit and cold drinks. Life continuing like the world wasn't ending inside that hospital. That's when he saw her. Alice. Walking alone. Carrying a plastic bag with her belongings. Head down. Moving like someone trying not to be seen. Victor watched her cross the parking lot. Watched her reach the main road. Watched her turn left, away from the bus stop, walking instead of riding. Saving money, he realized. Even after being fired. Even after being humiliated. Still choosing to walk to save a few naira. Something clicked in his chest. He followed her. Not in his car. Not with security. Just him, on foot, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice. Alice walked for 15 minutes through crowded Lagos streets. Past beggars sitting on corners. Past women selling oranges from baskets balanced on their heads. Past men playing checkers outside a beer parlor. She didn't stop. Didn't buy food even though she must have been hungry. Just kept walking. Finally, she turned down a narrow path between two buildings. The kind of place people with money never noticed. The kind of place that didn't exist on maps. Victor hesitated. This was crossing a line. Following someone into a neighborhood where he clearly didn't belong. But his daughter had hours left. So he followed. The path opened into a neglected lot behind an old residential compound. Weeds grew everywhere, trash caught in corners. A rusty water tank leaned against a crumbling wall. Alice stopped in the middle of the lot, knelt down, started searching through the overgrown grass like she'd lost something valuable. Victor stayed hidden behind the corner of a building, watching. She found it. The plant. The same green herb she'd shown him in that storage closet. Growing wild in a place nobody cared about. In soil people probably poured dirty water on every day. Alice pulled out a small knife, cut a few stems carefully, like she was performing surgery, wrapped them in cloth with hands that shook slightly. Then she sat back on her heels and spoke, out loud, to nobody. "Forgive me, grandmother. I tried." Her voice broke on the last word. Victor felt something crack inside him. This girl, this poor, fired, humiliated girl still believed. Still came here to harvest a plant that everyone else called worthless. Still held on to knowledge that the whole world told her was wrong. He stepped out from his hiding spot. "Why?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. "Why do you still believe it works?" Alice jumped, spun around, saw him standing there. The herb fell from her hands. For a moment, neither of them moved. Just a billionaire and a cleaner, staring at each other in a forgotten lot as darkness settled over Lagos. Victor raised his hands slowly, not threatening, surrendering. "Please," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to report you. I'm here because my daughter has maybe 2 days left, and I've run out of everything except desperation." Alice stared at him, then slowly bent down and picked up the herb. "My grandmother treated 12 people with what your daughter has," she said quietly. 11 survived. Victor's breath caught. And the 12th? His family brought him too late. The words hung in the air like a warning. Victor demanded a meeting. Not a request. A demand. At 2 in the morning, he had the hospital's senior doctors assembled in a private conference room. Dr. Chen, 3 specialists, 2 lab technicians pulled from their beds, and Alice, sitting in a corner chair, terrified, still wearing her street clothes because nobody had given her a uniform back. Victor placed the herb on the conference table like evidence in a trial. "I want this analyzed," he said. "Tonight." Dr. Chen looked at the plant, then at Alice, then at Victor. "Mr. Rodriguez, even if this has medicinal properties, we can't just administer an untested. I'm not asking for permission." His voice cut through the room like ice. "I'm asking for analysis. You have 12 hours. One of the specialists, an older man with gray hair, leaned forward. "Sir, with respect, hospital policy requires." The door opened. Cynthia Blake walked in. Nobody had invited her. "What is going on here?" She looked around the room, eyes landing on Alice. Her face hardened. "Why is this girl back in the hospital? I had her terminated." Victor stood, slowly, the kind of slow that made everyone in the room nervous. "Ms. Blake," he said, voice deadly calm, "my lawyers informed me this afternoon that hospital policy allows experimental compassionate use when all conventional treatments have failed. We've failed. So now we try this." Cynthia's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You can't be serious. This is a violation of every medical standard. My daughter is dying." Victor took a step toward her. "Your standards haven't saved her. Your protocols haven't saved her. Your reputation and your policies mean nothing to me right now. So either you leave this room, or I make one phone call and have you removed from this hospital permanently." The room went dead silent. Cynthia's face turned red, then white. She looked around for support. Found none. Every doctor was staring at the table. She left without another word. Dr. Chen exhaled slowly. "Mr. Rodriguez, I need to be clear. If we test this and it shows promise, and we administer it, and something goes wrong, I could lose my medical license. You could face legal action. This could destroy careers. Then destroy them." Victor's voice didn't waver. "But test it first." The lab technicians took the herb, disappeared into their department. Alice sat in that conference room for 6 hours. Nobody spoke to her. Nobody offered her water. She just waited, listening to the clock on the wall tick away the time Sophia had left. At 8 in the morning, the lab technicians returned. They looked shocked. Dr. Chen read their report. Read it again. Looked up at Victor with wide eyes. This plant contains compounds that suppress the exact inflammatory cascade we've been seeing in Sophia's blood work. It targets specific proteins we couldn't identify before. It's not magic, it's biochemistry we haven't studied. Victor sat down hard. Does it work? In theory. Dr. Chen spoke carefully. Yes, but theory and practice. Does it work? She met his eyes. It could. But Mr. Rodriguez, I need you to understand the risk. If something goes wrong, if there's an allergic reaction, if the dosage is incorrect. My daughter has hours left. He stood again. Hours. Not days anymore. The last code took too much out of her. So you tell me, do we watch her die following rules that haven't saved her? Or do we try the one thing that might? Dr. Chen looked at the report again. At Alice. At the herb. We'd need to prepare a sterile extract, she said slowly. Calculate dosage based on her weight. Monitor her constantly. How long? 2 hours to prepare. Then we administer and wait. Victor checked his watch. Do it. But before anyone could move, Alice spoke. Her first words in hours. Sir. Her voice shook. If this doesn't work, if she dies, everyone will blame you. They'll say you let a cleaner kill your daughter. Victor looked at her. Really looked. Saw the fear in her eyes. The courage underneath it. If she dies, he said quietly, it won't be because of you. It'll be because I didn't listen sooner. The 4 drip started at 2:47 in the morning. Alice watched from outside Sophia's room, hands pressed against the glass like she was praying. Maybe she was. She didn't know anymore. Inside, Dr. Chen stood by the bed, monitoring the line that carried the herbal extract into Sophia's veins. The extract looked pale green in the medical bag. Innocent. Like it wasn't carrying the weight of a child's life. Victor sat in a chair beside his daughter, holding her small hand. He hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Hadn't blinked much either. Just watched Sophia's face for any sign of change. The first 10 minutes passed. Nothing. The heart monitor beeped at the same weak rhythm. The ventilator breathed for her at the same steady pace. Her face stayed gray. Her body stayed still. Alice felt her stomach twist. What if she was wrong? What if her grandmother's knowledge only worked in a village, with people who believed in it? What if bringing it into a hospital with machines and protocols had somehow broken its power? 20 minutes. Still nothing. Dr. Chen checked Sophia's vitals. Wrote something on her chart. Her face gave away nothing, but her hand shook slightly when she adjusted the 4-line. 30 minutes. Victor's shoulders started to shake. Not crying. Not yet. Just the beginning of it. The moment when hope starts to crack and you can feel the weight of what comes after. 40 minutes. Alice closed her eyes. Whispered the words her grandmother used to say over sick people. Not magic words. Just reminders. Truth spoken out loud. The body knows how to heal. We just help it remember. 55 minutes. A nurse walked past Alice, glanced into Sophia's room, shook her head sadly. The look said everything. Another rich family learning that money can't buy miracles. 1 hour. Dr. Chen stepped out of the room. She pulled off her mask. Looked at Alice with tired eyes. No change yet, she said quietly. I'm sorry. Alice felt tears coming. Pushed them back. How long do we wait? I don't know. Dr. Chen's honesty was almost worse than a lie. I've never done this before. None of us have. She walked away, leaving Alice alone at the glass. Inside, Victor leaned forward, put his forehead against Sophia's hand. His lips moved. He was talking to her, saying things a daughter should hear when she's dying. Things about love and forgiveness and please don't leave me. Alice couldn't watch anymore. She slid down the wall, sat on the cold hospital floor, closed her eyes. Maybe her grandmother had been wrong. Maybe the 11 people who survived were just lucky. Maybe Alice had convinced a desperate father to waste his daughter's last hours on false hope. Time stretched. Minutes felt like hours. Then, a sound. Sharp. Urgent. Alice's eyes snapped open. The monitor alarm wasn't screaming. It was changing. The beeps were coming faster. Different. She stood up, pressed against the glass. Dr. Chen rushed back into the room. Checked the monitor. Checked Sophia's vitals. Her hands moved quickly across the equipment. Victor stood up. What's happening? Dr. Chen didn't answer immediately. She watched the numbers. watched them again, then turned to look at him. Her temperature just dropped by 1 degree. Victor's face went blank. Is that good? It's the first improvement we've seen in 3 weeks. The words hung in the air like something fragile, something that might break if anyone moved too fast. Alice's knees went weak. 15 minutes later, Sophia's oxygen levels improved. 20 minutes after that, her kidney function stabilized. By 6 in the morning, her liver enzymes started dropping. Dr. Chen ran the tests 3 times. Didn't trust them. Couldn't afford to trust them. But the numbers didn't lie. Sophia's body was responding. The herb was working. At 7:15, as Lagos woke up outside the hospital windows, as street vendors set up their stalls and buses started running and life continued like it always did, Sophia's eyelids moved. Just a flutter. Barely visible. But Victor saw it. He leaned forward. Sophia. Her eyes opened. Just a crack. Confused. Tired. Alive. She looked at her father. Her lips moved. No sound came out at first. The ventilator was still in her throat. Dr. Chen moved quickly. We need to remove the breathing tube. She's trying to breathe on her own. 10 minutes later, the tube was out. Sophia coughed. Weak. Rough. But real. Then she spoke. One word. Barely a whisper. Papa. Victor broke. Completely. He collapsed into the chair, face in his hands, sobbing like a man who'd just watched his world end and then get handed back to him. Outside the room, Alice slid down the wall again. This time, she cried too. Not from sadness. From something bigger than relief. From the weight of knowing her grandmother had been right all along. 2 days later, Sophia was sitting up in bed. Eating. Talking. Smiling. The hospital called it remarkable. Dr. Chen called it unprecedented. The other specialists called it impossible but stopped saying it out loud after Victor's lawyers reminded them about liability. News spread through the medical staff like fire through dry grass. Whispers in hallways. Nurses gathering in break rooms to talk about the cleaner who brought a plant that saved a dying girl. Some people said it was luck. Others said it was coincidence. A few said maybe traditional medicine wasn't as useless as they'd been taught. But nobody said it loudly. Not yet. Victor called a meeting on the 3rd day. Required attendance. Hospital board members. Senior doctors. Department heads. And Cynthia Blake. She arrived last. Face tight. Dressed perfectly like always, but something about her looked smaller now. Like she knew what was coming and was trying to hold herself together. Alice sat in the back row. Victor had insisted she attend, but she felt wrong being there. These were important people. She was just. Let's begin, Victor said, standing at the front of the conference room. He wasn't wearing a suit today. Just a plain shirt. He looked tired but solid. Like a man who'd survived something that should have killed him. My daughter is alive. He let the words sit for a moment. 3 days ago, every doctor in this hospital told me she had hours left. You told me there was nothing more you could do. You told me to prepare for the worst. Nobody spoke. Then this woman, Victor gestured to Alice, a cleaner that this hospital fired, told me about a plant her grandmother used in a village. A plant that traditional healers have used for generations. A plant that saved my daughter's life. Dr. Chen shifted in her seat. She'd submitted her full report that morning. The biochemistry. The mechanism of action. The results that shouldn't have been possible but were. I want to know, Victor continued, voice hardening, why nobody in this hospital knew about it. Why traditional medicine is treated like superstition. Why the woman who saved my daughter was humiliated and fired for trying to help. Silence stretched across the room like a wound. Then Cynthia spoke. Mr. Rodriguez, you have to understand, hospital policy requires. I don't care about policy. Victor's words hit like stones. I care about the fact that my daughter almost died because this institution values rules over results. One of the board members, an older man with glasses, cleared his throat. Sir, we operate under strict medical guidelines. We can't allow untrained individuals to. Untrained. Victor turned to face him. Alice's grandmother treated 73 people over 20 years. 68 survived. That's a better success rate than most of your specialists. The board member's face went red. Victor pulled out a folder, dropped it on the table. This is research from 1997. a pharmaceutical study on traditional Nigerian plants with anti-inflammatory properties, funded by one of my companies. The research confirmed that certain indigenous plants were effective, highly effective. He paused. Let that sink in. The research was shelved because the profit margins weren't high enough. Because you can't patent a plant that grows wild. Because healing people isn't as profitable as treating them forever. Dr. Chen closed her eyes. She'd read that report last night. Had barely slept after. So here's what's going to happen, Victor said. This hospital will issue a formal apology to Alice. You'll create a department for traditional medicine research. And Ms. Blake, he looked directly at Cynthia, you're done here. Cynthia stood up fast. You can't. I can. Victor's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. I've already spoken to the board chair. Your termination is effective immediately. Her face went white, then red. She looked around the room for support. Found none. This is because of that girl. She pointed at Alice. You're destroying my career because some village cleaner got lucky. No. Victor's voice went cold. I'm ending your career because you valued your pride over a child's life. Because you humiliated someone for trying to help. Because you represent everything wrong with a system that throws away knowledge it doesn't understand. Cynthia grabbed her bag, walked toward the door, stopped next to Alice. For a moment, their eyes met. Cynthia opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, then left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Victor turned to Alice. I'm sorry it took my daughter almost dying for anyone to listen to you. Alice didn't know what to say, so she said the only true thing she could think of. I'm just glad she's alive, sir. Sophia wanted to meet her. 5 days after waking up, still weak but getting stronger, she asked her father the question that had been sitting in her mind since the nurses told her what happened. Papa, who saved me? Victor was sitting beside her bed, reading emails he'd been ignoring for weeks. He looked up, smiled. The first real smile Alice had seen on his face. A young woman named Alice, he said. She works here at the hospital. Can I meet her? Victor made a call. 20 minutes later, Alice arrived at Sophia's room. She'd changed out of cleaning clothes into regular ones, jeans and a simple blouse her roommate had lent her. She felt strange walking through the hospital without a cat to push. Like she didn't belong. Sophia looked so small in that bed. Thin. Pale. But her eyes were bright. Alive. Hi, the girl said. Her voice was soft. Still recovering. My dad says you saved me. Alice shifted on her feet, uncomfortable with the credit. The plant saved you. I just remembered it. Will you teach me? Sophia asked. About the plants. About what your grandmother knew. The question caught Alice off guard. You want to learn. If something this simple could help me, other people should know. Sophia's face turned serious. Older than 12. Right. Alice felt something warm spread through her chest. This girl, this rich American girl who could have anything, wanted to learn from a village healer's knowledge. Yes, Alice said quietly. Other people should know. Later that day, Victor asked Alice to meet him in a private conference room. She went, nervous. Rich people wanting private meetings usually meant trouble. But when she arrived, he wasn't angry. He was holding an envelope. Alice, I owe you everything. He set the envelope on the table between them. I want to repay you. Sir, you don't. Please, let me finish. He pushed the envelope toward her. Full scholarship to any nursing school in Nigeria. Housing allowance. A guaranteed job at one of my company's medical facilities after you graduate. Everything paid for. Alice stared at the envelope. Didn't touch it. It's not enough. Victor looked confused. I can offer more. A car. An apartment. Whatever you need. It's too much, sir. He leaned back. I don't understand. Alice took a breath. Tried to explain something her grandmother had taught her. Something about knowledge and payment and why some things shouldn't be sold. My grandmother never took payment for healing, she said carefully. She said the knowledge wasn't hers to sell. It belonged to the people who came before her. To the land. To God. She was just holding it for a while. But you deserve a future, Victor said. You deserve education. Opportunity. I do want to study, Alice admitted. But not as payment for Sophia's life. That feels wrong. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then what do you want? Alice thought about her grandmother's notebooks, the careful records, the names and symptoms and treatments that nobody had bothered to write down officially. Knowledge that would die when the last person who remembered it died. My grandmother kept records, she said. 73 cases over 20 years. I want them studied properly. Not for profit. For people. So doctors know these treatments exist. So they can help others. Victor nodded slowly. And for yourself. Help my younger sister finish school. Alice's voice got quieter. She's smarter than me. She deserves the chance I didn't get. Victor looked at her like he was seeing something he'd never seen before. Like he was understanding something for the first time. Your grandmother raised someone remarkable, he said. 3 days later, Victor announced a new initiative. A research program documenting traditional Nigerian healing practices. Testing them properly. Making the results public. Free. Alice would be involved. Not as a cleaner. As a consultant. Paid fairly. Respectfully. Her sister got enrolled in a good school. Full scholarship. Alice didn't want fame. Didn't want to be on TV or in newspapers. Just wanted the knowledge to survive. On her last day visiting Sophia before the girl flew back to New York, they sat together in the hospital garden. Sophia was strong enough to walk now. Still tired easily, but improving every day. Will I see you again? Sophia asked. Maybe, Alice said. If you keep your promise. What promise? Alice smiled. To remember that money can buy doctors. But wisdom comes from everywhere. Even from people who clean floors. Sophia hugged her. Tight. The kind of hug that said thank you in a language that didn't need words. 3 months later, Alice walked through St. Mary's Medical Center carrying textbooks instead of a mop. Everything had changed. She was enrolled in nursing school now. Not because of charity. She'd passed the entrance exams on her own. Victor had helped with fees. Yes, but the grades were hers. She still worked part-time at the hospital. But now in a small office on the 3rd floor. The Traditional Medicine Research Department. A space that didn't exist 4 months ago. A space that shouldn't exist according to people who thought modern medicine was the only medicine. But it did exist. And people were starting to pay attention. Dr. Chen stopped her in the hallway. Alice, we got another case file. A healer in Oyo State. Can you help translate the treatment descriptions? Alice smiled. Yes, Ma. I'll look at it this afternoon. Things were different now. Some staff nodded at her respectfully when she passed. Others still looked away. Some nurses who'd laughed at her before now asked quiet questions about traditional treatments. Others never would. She was okay with both. Change didn't happen all at once. It happened in small moments. In quiet conversations. In one person deciding to listen instead of mock. Sophia visited Lagos every few months now. She and her father came together, staying longer each time. The girl had started a blog. Forgotten Cures, she called it. She interviewed traditional healers. Shared their stories. Gave them credit. Respect. She never posted Alice's photo. Alice had refused. Didn't want to be famous. Just wanted the knowledge to spread. One afternoon, Alice was buying medicine at a pharmacy near the hospital. She turned a corner and nearly walked straight into Cynthia Blake. They both stopped. Cynthia looked different. Older. Tired. She was wearing a regular nurse's uniform now. Working at a smaller clinic across town. The kind of place that didn't have her name on an office door. Their eyes met. Cynthia's mouth opened. Then closed. She looked like she wanted to say something. Maybe an apology. Maybe an insult. Maybe just an explanation for why she'd been so cruel. But she said nothing. Just looked away. Walked past. Alice watched her go. Felt something strange. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Just nothing. The woman who'd humiliated her didn't matter anymore. The power she'd held was gone. That evening, Alice was called to consult on a new case. A 6-year-old boy. Same symptoms Sophia had. Same pattern of organ failure. Same confusion from doctors. The family was poor. Couldn't afford the advanced treatments. Were preparing to take him home to die. Alice brought the herb. Now officially recognized. Properly prepared. Carefully measured. They administered it with the parents' permission. With proper medical supervision. With hope but no guarantees. 2 days later, The boy's fever dropped. 3 days later, his kidneys started working again. By the end of the week, he was sitting up, eating, asking for his mother. The mother cried when she saw Alice in the hallway, tried to press money into her hands. "Please, take it. You saved my son." Alice closed the woman's hands gently. "My grandmother never charged. Neither will I. But how can I repay you?" Alice thought about that question, about debt and gratitude and what really mattered. "Tell other people," she said. "When someone's sick and medicine isn't working, tell them there are other options. Tell them to ask. Tell them not to give up." The woman nodded, hugged her, left. Alice walked out of the hospital at sunset. The Lagos sky was orange and purple. Traffic roared. Generators hummed. Street vendors called out their prices. Life continued like it always did. She passed the spot where she'd been publicly shamed, where security had dragged her away while people laughed, where she'd felt smaller than she'd ever felt in her life. Some of the staff who'd watched that day were leaving their shifts now. A few nodded at her. Most didn't. She was fine with both. She sat on a bench outside, studying for her pharmacology exam. A young cleaner walked by, struggling with a heavy cart. Alice stood, helped her lift it over a step. The cleaner looked surprised. "Thank you, Ma. We're all just trying to survive," Alice said. "Might as well help each other." She sat back down, opened her textbook, studied under the streetlight while Lagos moved around her. Inside the hospital, machines still beeped. Doctors still saved lives with science. Nurses still worked double shifts. Nothing had completely changed. But on the third floor, in a small office, someone was documenting knowledge that almost died, writing down treatments that grandmothers had passed to granddaughters, testing plants that grew in forgotten places. And in a village 3 hours away, an old woman's wisdom was being honored. Not because it was perfect, because it was true. The cure didn't come from the people with the most power. It came from the people with the most courage to remember. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change the world. One saved life at a time. What would you do if everyone called you crazy for believing in something that could save a life? Alice risked everything: her job, her dignity, her future, because she knew the truth her grandmother taught her was real. And in the end, that courage changed everything. Now we want to hear from you. Would you have had the courage to speak up like Alice did? Have you ever witnessed traditional knowledge being dismissed, only to prove valuable later? What moment in this story hit you the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one.